Adrienne Green, you're live on Women Investor Wednesdays. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, and you're definitely my most furthest distance person I've ever interviewed, Osaka, Japan.
Yes. It's
With your family.
amazing. Yep, it's my family of five, my husband, myself, and our three kids.
So we're going to definitely get into that. But before we get into my interview with Adrienne and welcome everyone that's coming on live, I just wanted to remind everyone why we're here. So we're here because 5 years ago, I learned a terrible stat that of all of the commercial real estate investors in the domestic US, only 3% were women. And half of that was inherited or women who were signing on their husband's guarantee. And I thought that was awful. So I said, I need to help change that, figure that out. I was 60 at the time. And I said, I want to get that number from 3% to 10% by the time I turn 70. So I have 6 more years, but I think we're making progress. So I started interviewing women saying, do you invest? Yes. Where do you invest? The stock market. But wait a minute, you're in commercial real estate. Yeah. You rep Starbucks, you find a site for Starbucks, but you don't invest in the deal. No. Well, why don't you do that? Well, I don't have $1 million. Okay. You don't need $1 million. Well, it's risky and complicated. So is the stock market. And then they all started saying the same thing. I don't know any women doing it. I went, oh, I can solve that problem. So had a virtual conference during COVID, 100 women. It was fabulous. I interviewed women like you. And since then, we've had 4 live conferences, 250 women packed in a room where I'm interviewing women on stage. Women like you go in breakouts and talk about, the asset classes that you're investing in, showing underwriting, et cetera. We are now having women in the audience investing with each other. So, and then I realized, because I only keep it at about 250 in the room, what can I do? Because I'm only reaching 250 and a lot of the women are coming back. So it's like this set 250. And that's when I decided, let's do a podcast every Wednesday. And so now I think I'm up to over 100 women interviewing like you. So welcome and thank you for helping me introduce other women to the women watching and the men that might be watching, that there are other women out there investing in real estate.
Yes, for sure. I'm happy to share my story, and I hope it inspires or educates some of your audience.
So tell us about, can you remember the first investment that you guys made?
Yes. So I was not raised with a real estate investor background or family. I was raised very conventional American, go to college, get that W-2 job, work at it until you're going to be 65 or more and retire. And so that was my background. And went to college. I studied business, didn't love working in finance and being at a desk all day. And I went back and became a teacher, a high school math teacher, which I loved. I have a teacher's heart that I still use to this day with, teaching investing, I think at this point. But there came a point where I realized my husband and I, we wanted to start our own family. And I didn't want to leave, the baby I wanted to have to go be with other people's kids in, that high school teaching. And so it's like, well, what can I do so that I can have that time freedom, that location freedom? And we had bought a single family home that was, we thought would be our forever home. Of course it wasn't, we moved eventually, but it was this huge house for just the two of us. Right. And so after a few months of being there, I was like, you know what? We've never stepped foot in this basement. Like, we have this walkout basement. It's got its own entrance, bedroom, bathroom, and we never use it. What if we rented that out, and that could be some of the income to replace my teaching income so that I don't have to go to this high school anymore, right? So I can get that time freedom and that location freedom. And this was scary, right? Like, I have this idea, and yet it's intimidating because you think of all the what ifs, right? What could go wrong? Oh my gosh, I'm going to have people in the house. Well, what if they're loud? What if it's not safe? What if something happens, right? Any number of things. You know what, though? I was like, hey, it's a 1-year lease. It's a 1-year lease. After that, we can keep going or not, right? It's not a lifetime commitment. It's not going to be the end of the world, right? We have the right to vet these people. We have the right to do a background check. We have the right to make sure, especially because we lived in the house, we had a lot of rights in regards to choosing those tenants. And also I was like, we can take it one step of the way. We can put the listing up and see what happens. See who we get. We don't have to rent it. So if we don't get any tenants that feel like a win, we can just stop. And so
Right.
that's really what it was like. Like, hey, I just have to say yes to this next step and see what happens. So that's how I got started. And it ended up being great. It ended up being there were unanticipated benefits rather than unanticipated negatives. Like this house was on acreage. I actually had 11 acres there. And so there weren't any neighbors really close. So it ended up being a huge benefit to have this really nice, husband, wife, and little kid, young family who were renting the basement because it was people to be around, especially like when my husband traveled for work a few times for a couple weeks at a time. So it was kind of nice to be like, hey, I actually had an incident where, so this was on acreage, a bear came and attacked our beehives. We had beehives while my husband was all the way on the other side of the world in Australia. And thankfully, this couple, we'd rented the basement and they were there because it ended up being a huge thing. And it was nice to have some extra pairs of hands and some people to help with the
Wow.
cleanup from that. So ended up being a huge win. And I'm so glad we did that. And it ended up being the stepping stone to then getting into real estate on a bigger scale, buying investment properties. I ended up becoming a real estate agent. And now it really has given us the life we have now, where I handle our real estate investments and working with real estate investors full time. Due to this, we started a virtual staffing company that helps entrepreneurs, business owners, investors get virtual assistants. And so it's funny because back then I was a teacher and my husband was a computer engineer. Now we are full-time investors and entrepreneurs. And because of that, we're able to travel the world full-time with our family. We don't have to commute into a desk every day or anything like that. So that was the start and how impactful it's been.
So what a success story. So did you have to add a kitchen down there or did it already have a kitchen?
That is the one thing that we added. And what happened is it was the prior owners had it like plumbed for a wet bar, but they'd never installed it. And so we actually were coming back from like a long weekend and we were going to go buy an IKEA. And I was like, let's just stop in and see, because I had heard and, in my research, it was like IKEA is a great place to just plug and play those pieces for the kitchen. And we ended up buying the entire kitchen on that quick little pit stop into IKEA. And we had a big pickup truck at the time, like I said, acreage, and, livestock, all that. So we loaded up the back of the pickup truck, all the things you need for a kitchen, even for a small one, right? All the counters, the cabinets, all that. We ended up having to drive home, unload, and then my husband had to turn around, drive the hour back to IKEA, get the second load of stuff, and come back. So it was totally spontaneous, and it ended up working out perfectly. So it was worth it.
You are so brave. I mean, they don't even know half of it, but just that is very brave. Very, very brave. Okay. So we're going to get to the staffing and the traveling and the class. We're going to get to those, but tell us about the real estate that you guys own now, the portfolio.
Right. So when we first, there's a few lessons I think here for your audience. When I first got started with real estate investing, I lived in Northern Virginia and I wasn't doing a whole bunch of research, right? I wasn't thinking about long distance investing. I was not doing any of that. I was just like the few people I know who invest in real estate, which was pretty much a few of my husband's coworkers, right?
Men.
And men, yes. They bought locally. They would maybe just keep their old house as a rental. And so I didn't think big picture, right? And yet it still worked, right? So that's one of the things is I would say, get started however you can. Don't worry if it's not what you think the ideal path is. It's still going to be great. Real estate investing is still going to be great. So we started investing locally, which is really more of an appreciation market in Northern Virginia. We had to find the needle in the haystack to find something that would be cash flow positive because we were not in a situation at that point where we could afford to have a rental that didn't cover all of its costs. So we had to self-manage to keep our costs low for it to be cash flow positive. So we started super hands-on, super like doing it all ourselves, sweat equity and all of those things. And then I reached the point where we did start to expand, start to think bigger. And I realized I cannot keep doing all of it myself, right? I need to use leverage of other people and things like that. So that happened when we bought our first long-term rental, which was a short-term rental in Myrtle Beach. And that opened my eyes. Like, yes, there were growing pains with that to have first our first long-term rental. And second, our first short-term rental, or long-distance rental and short-term rental. Those were the two big things that really broke my self-management, sweat equity, DIY system. And that was a great thing because that allowed us to make a better, more leveraged system that could grow further, right? So now my portfolio looks like 3 short-term rentals that we have in Myrtle Beach, and then several long-term rentals that I have in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is a market I moved to, great market for investing. And then I also do like some passive investing, some joint ventures. And what I'm really loving right now is we do hard money lending to those people who are doing flips and burrs and that kind of thing, because when interest rates are high, it's a great time to be the lender. So that's what I'm up to these days, Beth.
Yes. So that is fascinating. When did you get started doing the hard money lending?
It was a little over 3 years ago. And, at that time, I was an active real estate agent in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I was working primarily with investors as my clients. In fact, I had started a team because I had so much business with investors that I couldn't do it all myself. So I had a team of real estate agents there in Chattanooga. We were doing stuff on the residential side, not the commercial side. We were helping people buy single family homes, small multis that were good investment properties, good rentals. And I was feeling that pain point of helping my clients get hard money lending, right? Because so many clients, they wanted to do that value add, they wanted to flip or to burr, and they needed the hard money lender. But as you know, some parts of real estate are kind of like the Wild West. And so I would have these hard money lenders that I had talked to. I would do these email intros, and then they would not follow up with the clients, right? They would ghost them. And so when my husband was leaving a W-2 job, for those who are new to this concept, I'll try to explain it as quickly as possible. When he left his W-2 job, he could roll over his 401k, right, to an IRA. And he could roll it over to a self-directed IRA, which is when you can control what those IRA funds are invested in. And instead of putting it all in like the stock market, we could put it into real estate, and we could do that. The SDIRA is especially great for doing hard money loans. So that's what we did, is we rolled over his 401k to this SDIRA, and we started doing hard money loans to my investor clients as a real estate agent. And so I really didn't, again, it wasn't some big calculated strategic thing. It was, this is solving a need and it's giving us a good return. It's helping people and giving us a good return, but it's gone so well. What we love about it is it's a very easy, right? Like we can easily lend hard money loans traveling the world. I'm not having to check on contractors. I'm not having to deal with the nitty gritty of a flip or a rehab or any of those things that can pop up. And yet I'm still getting a great return. Plus, I know this is something that you care about a lot too, Beth. Like I'm helping Main Street, right? I'm helping, Joe the contractor or Joe the flipper, or these people who are trying to change their lives and change their families' lives, and the community, right? It's taking these houses that were unlivable most of the time, right, and making them into these beautiful homes that people can use.
Amazing. So any women you're lending money to yet?
We have had, yes, yep. We have had women who are borrowing and doing the flipping and the burring and everything like that, for sure. I'd love to have more. So anybody out there, of course, we've got some certain markets we work in, but if there's people out there looking for some hard money loans, let's talk and see if that might be a win for you.
Yeah. So while you're traveling the world in Japan, et cetera, then you don't have to worry about doing due diligence on an asset. Or like you said, meeting with contractors, you just have to do the due diligence up front with the borrower.
Right. It's the borrower, and it's a little bit of the deal in terms of like, do we really, do we believe the ARV that they've put up? Does that make sense to us? But yeah, it's a whole lot less work in that sense than
it's more
doing
transportable.
That flip or that rehab.
Yeah, it's more transportable, right? So so how many hard money loans have you done? Approximately.
That's a great question. I don't know. Somewhere between 25 and 100.
Amazing. And obviously the rates fluctuate.
Mm-hmm.
On average, what kind of rate would you charge?
Typically, we're going to start at about 2 points for like an origination fee, and we're going to be at between 13 to 15% on the interest rate. Now, that's going to vary as people get, experience with us, as they have a track record. It's also going to vary on the terms that they have. So, what I think sets us apart from other hard money lenders is that we are, we're not some big company. We're not some private equity firm that's just like checking off boxes. We're real estate investors ourselves, and we're in the business of solving problems and making it a win-win. So, for example, one of our borrowers right now, he doesn't want to pay interest every month, right? He wanted to defer and just pay everything at the end. It was easier for him and his cash flow management to do that. So after he had a little bit of a track record with us, we were able to switch to that system for him where he just pays everything at closing, and it makes he charges. Let me restate that. Because of that, of course, it's a little riskier for us, so he pays a higher interest rate.
Sure.
So that's where
Absolutely.
we can adjust the terms and the structure of the deal to meet what a specific borrower needs.
Amazing. Okay. So let's talk about, you have a company your husband runs. You help him a little bit, or so you do the class. Talk about the company and the class.
Right. Okay. So, Beth, it's funny. Everything, when you start to be an entrepreneur, it's like things just pop up and you're like, yes, I'll do it. Right. And so we have a few things that go on. So, I have my real estate investing, like we've talked about, the properties, the lending. And as a real estate investor and as a real estate agent, I learned the power of virtual assistants. And that happened when we moved to Chattanooga. And I was like, hey, to do the number of deals I want to do in this area, to make the amount of money I want to make, I cannot do all the operations work, all the admin work that's required for being a real estate agent, right? There's a lot with contracts and everything, like just the contract to close process from when you get under contract on a property until you get to that closing table. There's just a lot of admin work just in that piece. And so I kind of took the plunge. This was new to me. I'd always been like solopreneur in my, business journey up to this time. I was like, I'm going to bring on a virtual assistant because I couldn't afford local help. And I was like, we'll do the virtual assistant route. We'll see how it works. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. It is what allowed me to 10x my business from being a solo real estate agent and start that team, because I could do more deals, right? I could help more people too. So through that experience, I realized the power of virtual assistants. And I was like, there's so many people, so many entrepreneurs who don't know about it. So my husband, computer engineer by training, he was in that W-2 job, and he was like, I could help people do that. He's like, that speaks to my strength. So he is the one who kind of spearheaded our virtual staffing business, where we help entrepreneurs and investors get real estate agents, get virtual assistants. And we focus now we've done it for about 3 years. We focus on executive assistants because that's the role where typically you see a lot of bang for your buck, because you're taking stuff off your own plate as that business owner, or as that, like, let's say C-suite, executive team. You're taking the work off of your plate, that busy work, your bottom 80%, and your executive assistant is handling it. So I have this virtual staffing business that helps these entrepreneurs get executive assistants, amazing executive assistants, so that they can focus on their top 20% work. That's one of the endeavors.
So how many executive assistants are in your corral?
Well, we hire everyone to the client's specific needs. So rather than just have some, like you said, a depth chart of people, pretty much, if Beth, you were to come and say, hey, I know you have an executive assistant, but let's pretend you didn't, right? And you said, hey, I need somebody who is going to be able to help with my marketing, with my social media presence. Like, I'm really big on that. I've got this conference, so some event planning experience would be really helpful. Plus, of course, my day job of, helping with commercial real estate and all of that. You would come to us and say, these are the specific things I need. And it's not just, real estate investing experience. Is what kind of personality do you need? Like, what are their biggest things that they're going to do, and what's important to have? Like, do you really need somebody who's going to answer the phone, or do you need somebody who's going to handle all your operations on the back end? Because those are different personalities, right? So it's the logistics of the work in their experience there, and the personality that's a good fit. So people come to us with that, and then we are just a monthly service. We handle everything of, you come, you say that, you pay the deposit, we find that right person for you, get them hired and trained in general admin stuff, place them with you. You teach them the specifics of what you want them to do. They show up, they work 40 hours a week. They have all the tech to support them. We've got Google Workspace set up for them, ChatGPT, CapCut Pro, all the tools that they need so that they can then do their best job for you.
That's amazing. I always say, I post this on Twitter all the time and on all the other social media platforms. If you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's impossible to do our jobs without help. I've been so blessed. I shared with you before the call, Josie's been with me 21 years. We just celebrated our 21st anniversary, which she started a month after I started the company. I would be up at 3:00 in the morning trying to figure out how to do an attachment because I had an assistant at my W-2 that I was at for 18 years. And I thought, well, I can figure out how to do this on my own. I'm like, this is not this is not what I have my value, right? I need some help.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about the class.
So after I sold my real estate team in 2023 in the fall, and in the beginning of 2024, my family started traveling full time. So that's what we've been doing. And as I was doing this, I was like, okay, what do I want my next way to help people, right? I took some time after selling my real estate team.
And you're a teacher at heart, a teacher.
And I'm a teacher at heart. Yes. And so I was like, you know what? My, I guess my superpower is systems, right? My superpower is systems, organization, making things so that they're plug and play so that someone else can follow them. And that's what I did with my real estate investing, right? Once I had to do a short-term rental and long distance, I was like, I can't do it myself. I need systems so that other people can come in and help. That's where the virtual assistants came into play. And so I was like, you know what? I would love to help real estate investors run their investment portfolios like a business. Because if they don't do that, what ends up happening is they buy some properties and then they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have systems in place to manage this, right? I don't have anybody doing my bookkeeping and accounting, right? It's a burden every tax time, right? Or I don't have a system where someone can help me vet the next deal, or I don't have a system to help me, even if you're using a property manager, check and manage the manager, right? And so I was like, let me help with this, because otherwise what happens, and it's so heartbreaking, is people get out of real estate investing, right? They either realize, hey, I need to start running this like a business and I'm going to figure out how, or nope, I'm going to sell my properties and walk away. And that's just heartbreaking. So I was like, let me help people do that. And so I can help people one-on-one. And what I've also done is made this online course where people can learn how to hire a virtual assistant for themselves, because sometimes people want our full service virtual staffing agency, but often real estate investors, they might not have the cash flow for that yet, or they might want to keep more of their cash to reinvest. And they're willing, because everything's going to cost you time or money. They're willing to maybe spend a little more time to spend less money. So for those people, for those investors, I made this course that really walks you through it. It has all these done for you tools, right? They have for just let's say the job listing part, I have a worksheet to help you figure out what you need in your job description. And then I have a template for the job listing where you take what you figured out in the worksheet and you just plug and play it into that template, and you've got your job listing ready to go post on a site. And there's just tools like that throughout to help people.
Amazing. All the people, we have over 100 people today. And so many have always said to me, where do you find virtual assistants? I go, I don't know. I've had Josie for 21 years. So this is it's perfect that I'm interviewing you, because I know that there's a lot of need for this, exactly what you said. And I mean, I have a lot of women that still have W-2s and are growing a small portfolio, and they need a virtual assistant to help them because this is their side hustle.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay. So I can't let you not talk about your life. So you guys, were you living in Chattanooga when you decided that you guys were going to start traveling the world?
We were. So my husband and I have always really enjoyed travel, and we've always talked about, when we left, our kids were 8, 6, and 4, I guess, or almost 4, right? And so we would always talked about taking a time off when they were older, right? When the oldest one maybe finished elementary school, maybe we take a year and take them out of school and go travel. And when I was deciding to sell like my real estate team, my husband, because we do monthly like financial check-in meetings, and in one of those, my husband was like, that's our only thing that requires physical presence from either of us. Everything else we do is or could be virtual. We already were running our investments, long distance for our Myrtle Beach properties, even our Chattanooga properties, we ran as if we were long distance. Like, other people were doing all of that work and we really weren't going to them. And so it was like, we could go travel the world sooner rather than later. And so it was a little scary. And yet that's what we decided to do. So end of February 2024, we left Chattanooga. We spent a few months traveling mostly domestically. And then in June of 2024, we left the US and flew to Colombia. We've spent time 3 months in Colombia, a little over 3 months in Mexico. As a family, we've been back to the US only for a couple weeks in Hawaii for Christmas. And then after that, we came over to Asia. So none of us had been in East Asia before. It was a brand new adventure for the family. And because we're a family of 5, I book things out 6 to 9 months in advance, right? Because we need like a bigger Airbnb, we need 5 plane tickets, things like that. And so we had committed prior to ever being in Asia, we had committed to like 5 months, over 5 months in Asia, over 4 different countries. And I was like, I hope we like it. And we've been loving it. It's been great. It's been absolutely fabulous. It's been a great opportunity for us to grow, for us to learn new things, and really to enjoy it. Like, it's been really nice.
So the last time I spoke to you, you were in Vietnam, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So tell us all of the countries that you've been in and that you're going to.
Well, so here in Asia, we started in the Philippines. We did a month in the Philippines. We did a couple holiday parties for our employees in the virtual staffing business and enjoyed some of the other things in the Philippines, swimming with whale sharks and seeing tarsiers, which are like these tiny, tiny little primates. And then we went to Vietnam for 2 months. We stayed in Hanoi. Then we went to Ha Long Bay, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Absolutely beautiful bay with these cliffs. And then we did a month in Da Nang, which was fabulous. We loved it. In fact, we plan on going back to Da Nang. We did a week in Seoul, South Korea, which was fabulous, amazing, not enough time. We're also already planning on going back to Seoul. And now we are a couple weeks into 2 months here in Japan.
And you are homeschooling the kids?
Yes. And so, I talked about at the beginning, my background as a teacher, but I taught high school math. And so honestly, the idea of homeschooling these like young kids, like my second grade, when we started kindergarten and preschool, that was intimidating to me. And so if somebody else is watching this and like, oh, that's scary, I feel you. I was there. And yet it has gone so well. It's been so much better than I thought it would be. It's been a huge blessing. And it's really allowed my kids to shine, to have time to focus in their areas that they enjoy. My 7-year-old started playing chess because at a Philippines like arcade, he got a chess game with his tickets, like a little tiny little chess board.
Yeah.
And so he started playing chess. He loves it. He's amazing at it. In Da Nang, we had like chess lessons for him, and that would have never happened if he was in a typical school environment. So there's been great opportunities to come from it.
Right. I shared with you that for 3 summers I taught in Valencia, Spain for my alma mater, and my kids were 10 and 13, 11 and 14, and 13 and 16. And we lived in Spain for 5 weeks each of those summers. And it was life-changing for them. Mm-hmm. And life-changing. So I can't imagine, what an amazing opportunity and experience that you all are enjoying, and how great. And you can do that because of real estate.
Totally. Yes.
We'll bring that back around.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But it's so true, right? Because
it is.
With W-2 jobs, and I hate when there are people on webinars saying, quit your W-2 and go, you'll replace your money with real estate. Like, that doesn't happen quickly. Eventually, right. You can get cash flow and appreciation, and you can make money, but it takes It's not, snap your fingers and quit your job and then have enough money to pay your bills. But it can happen, and it can provide phenomenal opportunities for your family's future growth and wealth because of it.
Yes, it can. And you're right. I think in so much of our culture or society, we want an instant fix. I started with that house hacking my basement in 2013. So it was 10 years later that we were able to start to realize, hey, we could travel full time. And we did it 11 years later. And you know what, though? Even though it takes time, and that's fine. That's the way it's supposed to be. You grow along the way, and that time allows you to prepare and learn the lessons to do it well.
Absolutely. And you're so young.
Thank you.
So, last thing, there's a lot of people that watch this podcast who haven't dipped their toe in yet. So they probably have accumulated some money. They're ready to do it, but they have fear, right? So, and we can overcome fear, but so not speaking to the fear part of it, what would be some practical things that you would recommend for someone to consider dipping their toe into the world of investing?
Right. Well, I actually have something I think a little more philosophical for you today, Beth.
Right.
But it leads to the practical is something that's helped me a lot, and that's kept me in the path of success, let's say, is decisions are easy when your values are clear. And so there's so much you can do with real estate investing, right? And it can be overwhelming. What path is right for me? Is this going to work? Is it not? And we can have those fears creep in. And so I think if you start with, well, what are your values? What are you trying to accomplish here, right? So like for me, one of my values ever since the beginning has been time freedom and location freedom. That was from when I didn't want to have to go teach in that public high school. And it's the same here where I want to travel the world. And so those are some of my core values that help me determine the best path for me. And so that's what I would say for any viewers who are feeling a little bit of overwhelm or loss or not sure what to do yet, is it's not about, should I do, what's the benefit of, let's say, buying a strip mall versus doing a development deal that something else, right?
Yeah.
It's
or money lending, right?
Right. Or hard money lending. It's let's take a step back and say, why do we want to do this in the first place? What are our underlying core values? And using that and writing those out. And then that is your guide, your map that you can vet every opportunity by and figure out which ones are the right ones for you.
I love that. And I love what you said earlier, that you and your husband sat down and had meetings, right? Regarding your finances, your future, your goals. Love that. That's amazing.
Yep. Yes, we have it in the calendar every month.
That's amazing. That was one of the reasons I did a 101 goals. This is way before the bucket list. And I had gone to Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield's seminar on book writing because I wanted to write a book. I've since written 2 books, but the best thing I took out of that, and this was in 2004, was they said, write 101 things you want to accomplish in the next 10 years. And they said on stage, it'll only take 15 minutes. Well, it took me like a month, but like the first 20 were easy and the next 20 were, somewhat easy, not too hard. Then the next 20 were, they got hard as you wrote enough down. By the time I got to 80, the last 21 were impossible. And I just started putting things that I thought would never happen. Like, just like pulling it out of the air. Like, well, this is never going to happen. And I wrote down, live in a foreign country with my kids before they turn 16 and be a college professor. And the day I wrote be a college professor down, I hadn't graduated college. I had left when I went 5 years to Florida State, but my last semester I got mono and I never went back and finished. I had 3 incompletes. Oh, wow. So I went back when I was 44 to finish getting those last 3 incompletes and got my degree. But when I wrote down be a college professor, I knew that was never going to happen because no one's going to hire me to teach a class if I don't have my degree. Fast forward to, let's see, Alex's, so 2000 to 2010, I taught in Spain, lived in a foreign country with my kids before they turned 16, and I was a college professor.
That is
So
amazing.
having goals is so important, especially
mhm.
when you have a partner.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Well,
Love it.
Adrienne, it was such a pleasure. Thank you for getting up very, very early in your
Oh, it's totally worth it.
in Japan. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way?
I If somebody is looking for like our virtual staffing services, I would send them to Workergenics. That's ROR W. Let's restart that. Like I said, got up early. WORKERGENIX.com. Workergenics. And we've got some great tools there to help people see if it's a good fit for them. And then, if people want to connect about more of the real estate investing side of stuff, my own website, adriennegreen.com. I have a freedom blueprint there that walks you through the 10 pieces that I use to start running my portfolio like a business so that you can evaluate, see what might be the next step for you. And then I'm on Instagram pretty actively at @arealgreen.
All right. I got 2 of those. Let me see. Yeah. So Instagram, adriennegreen.com and workergenics.com. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful time in Japan,
Thank you.
and we'll talk soon.
That sounds great. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks, Adrienne.